Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Hot Breach podcast. As always, we'll be talking about Rainbow Six Siege predominantly, Siege news, Siege discussions, also a couple of other games that came out quite recently that I've been playing, rounding things off with the Rainbow Six Pro League, the games that we've had over the last couple of weeks, certainly for North America, and the last week for EU and LATAM, and then ending everything on a question and answer session. With me, as always, we have Prodigio Pete and Get Flanked.
Hi.
How's it going, guys?
Doing well, doing good, yeah.
Excellent.
Pretty good, man. My
Nice.
voice is a little scratchy. I've been solo queuing way too much over the last week and a half.
I think you can...
it's affected my sanity as well as my voice. I'm not in a good place right now.
I'm looking forward to actually hearing about that. It sounds like an interesting story for sure. But let's kick things off with the news. I'll bring that up on my screen right now. Second. There we go. So the main news, I think, for Rainbow Six right now is that the test servers have gone up again. We've had two sets of patch notes, one from the 26th of September. We'll talk about those. And then there was also a new set of patch notes that released only just today. So let me take you through those, or at least through the gameplay changes, which I think are the most important. Currently on the test server right now, they've changed the gadgets for both Pulse and Montagne to be toggle instead of hold. Now, I think for Montagne, I can definitely see the value in that. If you have the shield up, you want it generally to stay up until you're ready to get rid of it. And I think there's certainly the risk of accidentally letting go of the button just for a second, or you're trying to type to a teammate, or you're trying to press the push to talk button and you accidentally release the gadget button wherever you've got that map to. Maybe even on console that could be an issue. So for me personally, having Montagne on toggle makes sense. Pulse, I'm kind of neutral on. I don't mind it being toggle, but I don't think it's like an important change to make. What do you guys think?
I think it is. One of the first things I did when I started playing Siege was I had to remap that button from the mouse, because I think by default it's middle mouse click in. I'm not sure what it is on console, but I found that really hard to move around and hold it in. So to have that option to toggle it, I think is a good thing, because I tend to use control. So I've remapped whatever control was, which I guess was prone. So I think that's a good option for both of those operators, and long overdue.
I agree that I think this is a good option. I would rather see it be, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's going to be default, right? And there's no switching it. So I'd rather have a button, an option in the option menu where, I could say, toggle it on or off, and decide what I want. But yeah, I play a good bit of Montagne now. I've always played a good bit of Pulse, and I do agree this is something that's important. I, like you, Pete, I rewrapped that button as well, but I took it from my mouse wheel to one of my side buttons on my mouse, and that works pretty well. I think it's a good change, and I think it's something that we've needed to see for a while.
Yeah, and I suppose it's a really good point that one of the things I did right at the beginning as well is get it onto a different mouse button. So that's why it didn't really affect me as much as it maybe did you, Pete. But I can definitely see that if you've got that still on middle mouse, that's probably quite horrendous. Update number 2, and this is quite this is an important change. This is possibly the longest overdue update to Rainbow Six ever, and that is that the shield glitch is going away. Up until now, since the beginning of time, it was possible to place a shield at a sort of 90-degree angle in front of any window, any vaultable window, and block the attackers from coming in there. And it became, such an issue that for many players, that's a default strategy on certain locations, on certain maps, on certain objectives, is to block off a certain window. And really, that's not the intention, what the shield was there for. There was a bit of a discussion around this recently when it was I think it was either changed, or it was only discovered then that it's actually not illegal to use that under ESL rules. So technically in Pro League, the shield glitch would have been legal, and that became a whole discussion point because, hey, if it's legal in Pro League, then it must be a viable tactic. And people obviously arguing against that. And eventually then ESL clarified their position and said, no, this is not something we want. This is an exploit. It is banned in Pro League. And now changes are being tested that will stop that. And the way it works, I've seen this tested. The way it works is now if you try to put down a shield while you're in front of the window, it will actually shove you forward or backward by a couple of inches and then place the shield next to the window so that it no longer blocks the entry. And the patch notes tell us that this is work in progress. So what they're doing basically is they have to code this in window by window, site by site, map by map. This is not something they can just go and edit a piece of code and that's how it works everywhere. They have to actually create these non-shield zones in front of all important windows that are affected. So this is in the test server as of right now, but not actually implemented on all windows yet. Your thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I saw Koros did a video on it showing exactly how it works. So if you haven't seen it, basically, much like what Rogue just said, when you try to put it down in front of a window where it would prevent people coming in, you can now no longer put it there. And it will kind of force it to one side so you can't block the window. I think it seems like a reasonable enough change, though I haven't had any hands-on experience with it. So perhaps Flanked, who I think you've been on the TTS, have you?
No, I actually haven't yet. But I agree that this is a good change. I think that's a good way to handle it. The patch notes were a little confusing to me. Initially, whenever I read them, I thought that you were still going to be able to put the shield there, but it was still going to give you the option to mantle in because of the way it was worded. So I was picturing something that was a little bit uncomfortable there with basically mantling into a space that you couldn't before. Because I think that's the way that it's worded, that deployable shields will no longer cancel a mantle animation or a mantle option. But anyway, regardless, I think this is great. Again, kind of long overdue. They went a lot of different directions with this. Remember the test server where if you mantled onto one, it would, just fall down, which I thought, because there's two issues with the deployable shields. Deployable shields have been the cause of many issues. One, that it blocks windows. Two, that it allows people to get into angles that aren't intended by looking out of a window or something like that. So that was one of the fixes there. So I guess this would fix that as well, because you're not going to be able to put it close enough to a window, because most of those deployable shield glitch angles have to do with the window, putting it next to a window, jumping up, and then having an angle on a window looking out. But
a lot of that was patched out about 18 months ago. Do you remember there were places in the map you could get to by putting the shield and then vaulting and then having a friend sit somewhere and
vault over the friends,
up,
yes.
Up, down, left, right.
yeah, and it would put you onto like a beam on the ceiling or something and just give you this crazy angle. But they patched that out ages and ages ago. So I feel like this one was specifically for the vault prevention shield thing, no?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think so.
Exactly. I suppose it could work both ways, but the majority of the objective here is really just to stop people from blocking a window that then can no longer be used by attackers. And you think about it, there's sites where that can be really useful. I'm thinking you think about Coastline in the kitchen. You block that window, you don't really need any anchors anymore. You can play the delivery area, you can play Sunrise Bar and the Cool Vibe Stairs, and you don't really have to be at least as worried about people just jumping in anymore. That is certainly going to go away from now on once they've managed to code it in for each and every window. But actually, going back to something you just said, Flank, that you've not been on the test server. Pete, you haven't, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't either. And that's maybe something that's worth quickly mentioning as well, because there has been some discussion around this. Like, the test server normally entices players in by introducing something new, by introducing a new map, new operators, or some new gadget, some new change that is exciting enough that people want to go and see it. But very occasionally we have these test server iterations where it's few small technical changes. And the phenomenon we're seeing right now is no one really goes to play it. The people who try, who really want to just play it to give the developers some data to work with, they go there and it's empty. They can't find games. So I've seen some discussion on Twitter between members of the community and the developers, and a lot of people have been calling for maybe some kind of incentive to get people on, especially in instances like this. I have to say, it's maybe not a bad idea.
Yeah, I like it. I think that would be a good idea. You know, sometimes the TTS comes out and everyone wants to play it. There's new recoil on there, or we're testing the new operators or a new map and it's exciting. And I'm sure that they fill it up quite quickly then. But I think when they're testing some of these kind of what seems like more boring or background changes that are quite important to the state of the game, but for us, there's nothing new or exciting there. Obviously, it doesn't fill the TTS up so readily. So I would agree if there was something that carried over from the TTS client to the main build of the game, just to encourage people to go on there and fill the servers up so that they can get the data they need, I think that would be a good thing, even if it was just a charm or something like that they did specifically, like they did for Operation Health, you know, something like that, TTS, and then you could perhaps build them up over time, and you could have like a catalogue of all the different charms you got from taking part and participating in a TTS. And I would say as well, it should probably be after you've played, say, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours of it, not just download it, go in, play one game and then get it. I mean, play a few hours, then you get your charm. So yeah,
imagine you can get so creative with this. I can think of 1,000 different things right now, but imagine like if you played in this one, then you get a universal deployable shield charm. You know what I mean? Like, because that's the major concept of this one. If you play, you know, you can do something like that with everyone. Imagine a weapon camo where every patch that you went and tested for them, you got that patch inscribed on that weapon camo. So over time, you could collect all these patches on this weapon camo, and eventually, you know, they would all like run together and it would look really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of different stuff they could do with that. I think it's a great idea.
The get flanked weapon charm, that would be cool.
We both know I don't have that clout, Pete. Come on.
It could be even simpler if we want to make it like really easy. It could just be that, okay, instead of the renown you gain in the test server being completely wasted because you can't use it, make it carry over with a multiplier. Make it carry over with a ×2 multiplier. All the renown you get while you're on the test server is going to be multiplied by 2 and added onto your main account. It could be something as simple as that, really.
But here's what we're forgetting. I play on console. I have 0 access to this. How do I feel now?
Give it to everyone on console for free. Why not?
Well, you know, actually, but that's not true. Okay. Console players, correct me if I'm wrong here, console players have access to the TTS for free so long as they have a PC that can run it.
That's the way I used to understand it, and that was based on the fact that Koros he's majorly a console player, or the majority of his play is on console for Rainbow Six. But he used to join us for the TTS all the time, and only recently did he buy a PC copy for Rainbow Six. So I would have been 100% convinced, except that in the Rainbow Six news this week, they released an FAQ which says that you have to own the PC version as well, which to me doesn't seem right, but that's what the FAQ said.
I know initially when the TTS launched, not initially, I want to say after like the first test of the test server, the second time the test server came around, I believe it became available to console players, because there was a big stink about that. Maybe, honestly, what about this? Why not make the test server free to play for anybody? Anytime a test server goes live can hop on and play the test server. Even if you don't own the game, period. Why not? Could be a good demo / test environment, and add to the player count, and then maybe, hey, this was fun, I'm going to go try it over here.
Yeah, so just to make sure that I'm getting this right, let me read this out. This is from the 27th So a few days ago, and one of the first questions in this FAQ on my screen right now is, do I need to own the game to participate? And it says, yes, you will need to own Rainbow Six Siege on PC. Like I said, that's what the FAQ says, but I know for a fact that Koros used to play and only had the Xbox version.
In an ideal world, and I know it's not possible for the reasons that we've all spoken about previously, but in an ideal world, the TTS should be on console because obviously console has its own kind of balancing issues, but obviously they got the certification problem with doing that. And
console needs to change that. I'm sorry, but let's come back to that after your thought here, Pete, because console needs to get with the times and change that. But sorry, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, we saw recently Sony have allowed cross-platform play with Fortnite after really digging their heels in about that. So I just think like they're kind of set in their ways a little bit about it. But I think, don't they do this certification thing because they're worried about there being a patch that will basically break people's consoles? That's that they want to give it the okay, and the way obviously with TTS or these development type systems is the devs need to be able to update them kind of fluidly as they go along with new patches. And I think like with the consoles, they want to individually see the patches and give them the thumbs up before they deploy them.
I'm sure that is part of it, but I know there's been I've seen several videos, a couple by actually Drifter. He's rather large YouTuber, over 1 million subs, talking about how because Fortnite has stayed in early access, they can update their games for cheaper and without going through as many steps as a game that is not in early access, because they expect beta games to need to update and fix things on the fly. I believe that both Xbox and Sony allow games that are in early access or beta to be able to hot patch and to update faster, quicker, and cheaper than a game that's in full release. And that's just broken. Like, think about how backwards that is. You know what I mean? And okay, so Xbox recently announced that they're in beta testing for natively supporting mouse and keyboard. They're clear, everything's going cross-platform. We're clearly entering an era where a PC player and a console player, the divide between them is narrowing. Okay, so if consoles want to keep up with being as developer friendly and to allow their people on console to have as good of an experience as PC, they need to fix this. And it's okay, go through the certification process, but don't make the developers pay lots of money. And I don't know all the details about this. Don't make them, first of all, pay lots of money in order to update and make the experience for people who are playing on your platform better. Don't take forever to approve those updates either. You know, let's get them done. Let's get them through. And I think that you'll see a big improvement there.
Yeah, makes sense for sure. I'd say if console players can still play it on PC, that would at least kind of take away a little bit of the argument of it being unfair if you could earn rewards by going on the TTS. But then again, I would even say that you're providing a service, you're providing something that's valuable to the developers, and if you get a reward for that, well, if you don't have access to that from console, that's a shame, but so be it. I'd say having a reward in there is probably better than expecting people to come onto a test server that is offering nothing new, nothing valuable or interesting, and then just having these kind of mediocre or unsuccessful test server runs where you don't get as much out of it.
Yeah.
Obviously an open topic, but yeah, let me just move through the rest of the changes. There's also been an update, and this was, I think, initially launched with a problem and then updated again, and I think also a wording problem, so this is also an updated part in the patch notes. Glaz's bullets from his marksman rifle, sniper rifle, whatever you want to call it, they can no longer penetrate castle barricades at all, so they won't make holes, and they won't destroy the barricades anymore as of this test server patch. I think it's something we've kind of spoken about before because they did discuss this or mention this at the beginning of the season. But if any additional thoughts on that?
I think this is a second buff to Castle in this test server. First of all, it's a good change. It makes sense. I love it. No complaints whatsoever. But you think about it, what was stronger, the deployable shield on a window or a castle on that window?
Deployable shield.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you could still see through that window, but I can't melee a deployable shield and get it out of the way. Yep. There were so many aspects. So not being able to do that with a deployable shield could potentially lead to an increased pick rate for Castle and a little bit of a mini buff for him. And then also the glass stuff is another buff. Let's make Castle's barricades fireproof. Maverick should have no impact on a Castle barricade. Let's do that. Let's make it happen. Why not? I think we've seen Maverick.
Castle's getting a rework anyway, so I think they're going to be completely different when the rework happens anyway. So,
yep, and probably I suppose it makes sense waiting for that until we can see that. But as of now, yes, he's getting sort of a mini buff in the meantime. And then I think maybe the last patch, and this is mostly important for PC players, enabling and disabling the mouse scrolling inputs for weapons swap is no longer missing. So up until now, you couldn't really disable mouse wheel weapon swapping if you wanted to. And maybe some people would have wanted to take that out. Now that is a possibility. I think a good change, just adding more customizability to the controls for PC players. There's nothing you can argue. If you still want it, you still use it. If you don't, you can finally turn it off.
I've inadvertently switched weapons before, and so that's a good change. I don't think that I will personally be changing it, but I could see why some people would.
Does that mean, because what I do in other games on my mouse wheel, if I scroll forwards, that will always give me the primary weapon. So it doesn't select between them. And if I scroll backwards, it'll always give me the secondary. I can't keep scrolling. It will just give me the secondary. Is that what that... It doesn't mean that, does it?
No.
I don't know.
I wish it did mean that.
Yeah, for other games, I set it up like that as well. Yeah. I don't think you can in Rainbow Six. In Rainbow Six, it's just cycle through.
I'll be on the primary. I'll want the secondary, and I'll cycle all the way back to the primary. It's like, okay. Yeah.
Now, fresh off today, we've had another set of patch notes go live, and this will be going on to the test server as of tomorrow, I believe, yes. So that would be tomorrow, the 3rd of October, and they're basically going to change some things which will take out some exploits or bugs. The invisibility glitch, which we've seen return, Oregon washing machine glitch, mirror glitch, Clash ADS glitch. So... they are also reacting, I guess, to some glitches and exploits that have appeared since the last iteration, since the last DLC release. And yeah, we're going to see it in TTS first, and then hopefully soon after in the main game.
Have you... Sorry, go on.
The Oregon washing machine glitch. Is that the ability to mantle onto the washing machine after you destroy the laundry basket? Or has that always been in the game? Because I saw somebody in game, I believe it was yesterday, in a place that I've never seen anybody before. They weren't invisible. I could clearly see them, but it was like Oregon laundry room. They have the B-bomb right there, right in the middle of that room. There's those washing machines right behind it. And he was in between the bomb and on top of that washing machine. And I was like, I've never seen anybody there. But I asked him in the chat, and he said that if you melee the laundry basket, that it gives you a vault animation to get up there, and you can go prone on top of them. Now, it's not that tactically strong if people are looking for it, because you can shoot them from the hatch there. But I wasn't looking for it. It definitely caught me by surprise. He got, I think, 3 or 4 kills there. Is that what people are referring to? Because I've never looked into this Oregon glitch.
I'm not even sure what it means, and that sounds plausible.
Yeah, I read an explanation of it somewhere, but I can't seem to see it now. So
yeah, and I'll be quite straightforward as well. I don't really want to discuss these in detail as long as they're still in the game.
Yeah.
So
fair play.
I mean, if you're going to go and research those, that's up to you, but at least we're not telling you.
I have the impression it was something crazier than that. That's why I was asking. I thought it was something where you got like inside of a washing machine or something like that and made yourself like impossible to see or something like that. Like, I didn't expect it to be that. And it may not be that. It may be something completely different.
I mean, we've seen people melting themselves into staircases and all sorts of weird things, so it wouldn't be surprising to me if something like that existed.
So apparently you can still get into the washing machine, but it just puts you on a 1 hour spin cycle. So enjoy it. Enjoy it in there. Have you guys experienced the invisibility glitch in game? Like, have you seen people run like lately since because obviously that was in the game some months ago. Obviously it's re-emerged again as these things do tend to.
Not me personally, no, but I've seen videos over the last few weeks of people seeing it. And didn't it happen in one Pro League game?
Yeah, it did. Laxing's actually in my chat right now, and it was Cloud9 versus Mouse in the U.S. National. And there was one of them that turned invisible, and they had to do a rehost. Took like 5 minutes to get the rehost, and yeah, yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yes, I did notice tutorial videos popping up.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah,
well, as always, I suppose there's an audience for it and people will take advantage. What can you say? Except kind of a shame.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I think so. That's going into the test server, hopefully live soon. Moving on from there, I think the other small bit of news this week, I think this came out yesterday or the day before, and there's a bit of discussion around it. It's not major news, but I find it quite amusing. So Shaiiko, which many followers of Rainbow Six esports might know, he was a player who was banned for 2 years from competitive play for... The thing they managed to pin on him was use of a macro. That's what caught him. I've seen people suggesting, though, that it wasn't just about a macro. It wasn't just about hitting 4444 at certain intervals. I've seen people suggesting that that was linked to an aimbot that was being toggled or other things. So whatever it was the use of a macro that kept pressing the number 4 for him that got him caught there. He was banned for 2 years, and he has, as of I think a couple of days ago, he has had his ban renewed for another 2 years. So it was already 1 year down, but now it's been reset because apparently he was caught trying to play a Go4 under a secondary account. And, well, that means he was trying to circumvent his ban. Go4s, even though they're kind of unofficial, anyone can join them. They are still ESL competitions, so his ESL ban would have extended to those, and by trying to play a Go4, he tried to circumvent his ban, which automatically means that his 2-year ban has been renewed, and it just runs as of a couple of days ago. He's been quite vocal on Twitter. I think I saw a long thread there where he was saying, why would I even try to play a Go4? What interest have I in that? He was pretending as if that wasn't the case and he was innocent, and out of nowhere ESL started sending him these emails saying he was banned going forward again. And on the other hand, I mean, in the Reddit thread, BK, who is one of the head judges for the Pro League, he's basically come in and said, before anyone starts getting the pitchforks out, this is what happened. He tried to bypass his ban, and as per their rules, that means an automatic reinstatement. Have you guys seen or heard about this at all? Any opinions on that?
Yeah. I've basically followed it. I think pretty similar to what you summarized there. BK, who is an ESL admin, I guess you could say, really handles this stuff very well, and he is very strict on this stuff, and rightly as he should. Like, cheating in Pro League is something that will tarnish the whole scene, and you have to handle it very seriously. And I think he does a good job in doing that. I do want to make it clear here that I think that maybe there's some people who are under the impression that they caught him cheating again, and I don't think that's the case. So I want to say that, not necessarily in his defense, but I just don't want that misrepresentation out there. I think that what happened, like what you said, is just that he's banned. He can't participate in anything that has to do with ESL. GoForce have to do with ESL. He was trying to get around that. They caught him, and now his ban has been extended.
Yeah, I don't really know anything about it, so I don't want to just force an opinion on something that I don't know.
Yeah,
obviously, I know about the first ban, but, you know, it's a shame, really, because whatever you say about that first ban or the macro, whatever it was that they banned him for, he's obviously a phenomenal player anyway, and now he's got another 2 years to wait, so, you know, it sucks.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I've seen most commonly cited by people supporting him. Fans of his Twitch streams, fans of his YouTube videos are saying, look, he's got this amazing talent, this raw aim talent. He's a great player. We'd really love to see him redeem himself. And I think also he's been quite vocal, and this is not something I've seen directly, but I've seen people say of him that he's talking a lot of trash in terms of what he would do if he was allowed to. And some people have kind of then gone into the mindset of like, well, I'd really like to see him put his money where his mouth is. So those are sort of the arguments that people are making who are in support of seeing him again. And obviously, on the flip side, there's a lot of people who represent the opinion that, well, he's cheated. Some people say he should be banned forever for that. Some people say it's fair that he was banned for the time he was. And if he did try to get into a Go4, which obviously I would say, if ESL is claiming that he did, they must have some information that indicates that he tried to play under a different account. He's claiming it's absolutely not true. I don't know. I would say I'd be surprised if out of nowhere, based on nothing, ESL would do this. That makes no sense to me. So
yeah. You think they'd share the evidence with him, whatever they think they have to prove 100% or beyond doubt that he was playing on a second account.
It depends.
Think that he would know. If
they have some kind of system set up to catch people trying to do that, the last thing they want to do is publicly share, or even with one individual who could then spread the news about how they police that. Because he obviously, if he did do it, thought he was safe. He thought, hey, I'm just going to create a secondary account. No one will know that it's me. I'm going to go in under a false name and I can just play and I can get more practice in and all this and that. And whatever method they use to catch him, maybe they don't want that to be public knowledge.
Maybe he got snitched on by a teammate.
Maybe he bragged to someone in person and that person then spread. Who knows? Yeah. Or it could be something technical. It could be something in that they...
An IP.
They can see that it's someone from his PC in his location that has created an account and tried, and who knows? And obviously, if that's a thing, then they don't want people finding a workaround. They don't want people finding loopholes, which as soon as they explain how they found out, people will find loopholes, or people will put a lot of effort into finding loopholes.
That's a fair point.
So I understand why they would keep quiet. And that's pretty much it for sort of news for Rainbow Six for this week. Obviously, we're sort of mid-season, so not a lot of new stuff going on. But I think we could maybe go back and discuss Clash a little bit. I've just finished some work analyzing her guns in depth, and I put a video out on that, and some people were a little bit irate because I titled the video as these are two of the worst guns in the game, based on the fact that apart from the RG-15, the P10C, which is Clash's pistol, is actually, in terms of damage capabilities, the second worst. It is really, really bad. And in terms of the machine pistols, obviously being a burst fire only weapon, the SP-SMG-9 is pretty bad as well. But at the same time, something that I was really maybe a little bit surprised to see is how balanced the guns are as well. So they're both bad, and I understand that because Clash is not about gunfighting. But at the same time, this is the first time ever that we've seen an operator with a machine pistol and a pistol, And they're actually, it's both of them are a valid choice. It's kind of more down to personal preference rather than just like every other operator we've seen so far. The machine pistol was just always the choice. If you're playing Echo or Hibana with the P229, you're doing something wrong. Or at least you did up until the recoil changes we've seen. But these two weapons from the ground up were designed to be balanced, designed to be almost interchangeable with the similar efficiency depending on what playstyle suited you. So in terms of that, I mean, now that we've had a chance to play Clash a little bit, and with the knowledge that really her weapons are designed to be weaker compared to other operators, what thoughts do you have on Clash in general?
Well, first of all, the nerf/fix that they brought her way was it put her in a much better place, in my opinion. The weapon switch speed was way too fast when she was released, and where it is now is appropriate, I think. I think we're starting to see Clash used in Pro League, and we're really only just scratching the surface as far as what we're going to see with Clash. I'm seeing G2 ban Clash every single match that they play. That tells me one of two things. Either they recognize how the Clash could completely wreck some of their setups, or two, that they have a lot of stuff that they plan on unleashing with Clash down the line that they don't want to show yet. Clash is somebody that's going to continue getting better and better. Again, I think the best thing we can say is that as far as at the high levels with Clash right now, we're only seeing the surface scratch with her capabilities. I think regarding her weapons, I'll say this. Clash's machine pistol is the best machine pistol in the game right now.
Okay.
Would you trade that? If I'm Smoke, I would trade the SMG-11 in its current state right now for her machine pistol. If I'm Hibana, I would trade the Bearing 9 for her machine pistol. If I'm Dokkaebi, I would 100% trade the SMG-12 for her machine pistol. Fact is that if you do land both of those bullets from the burst, it is a quick kill. I know as far as on paper, the DPS and stuff, it is outclassed by the other machine pistols in the game. But when you factor that you can actually get kills at medium to long range with it, and that it does actually have a good damage with both of those bullets combined, I think it's the best machine pistol in the game right now.
So the advantage really that it has over the other machine pistols is the recoil.
Yes. Absolutely,
because of the forced 2-round burst.
In versatility, I think that with Clash's machine pistol, you can get kills at close, medium, and long range, and that's not something you can say about the other machine pistols right now.
You think if someone had sort of the discipline to only click very quickly and do 2 or 3 round bursts with the normal machine pistols, they could emulate that advantage?
Okay, well, let's think about that. With the SMG-11, let's say you can, and your recoil stays manageable. Then you're now losing that DPS, which rates the SMG-11 so high. Okay, also, now you still have a 16-round magazine, okay, with that SMG-11. So I would still give the edge to Clash's machine pistol in that comparison. Bearing 9, okay, yeah, you're still going to lose that high DPS that you know that was so coveted before. You do have a bigger magazine. It might be a little bit of a closer competition there. But I would still say it would be very hard to burst fire quick enough to where your recoil on the Bearing 9 would be comparable to Clash's machine pistol. And the SMG-12 is the same thing. The SMG-12 does very little damage per bullet. It's just that fire rate that gets it the high damage per second. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Rogue.
Yep.
So I do think even if you were able to burst fire it very effectively, you would be in a position where Clash's machine pistol might be the better option.
Yeah, makes sense. The damage, of course, being lower because it's suppressed by default for the SMG-12. Okay.
You can burst fire it.
I'm sorry. Let me just say one thing. I don't disagree with you titling the video that way, Rogue, because I do agree that for an operator who only has 2 weapons available to them, Hibana still has the Type 89. Smoke still has a shotgun and the FMG-9. So yes, I agree with what you were saying there. As an operator who has choices available to them, Clash probably has the worst weapon selections available to her. And I agree with that.
But then she's not, like she's not really a fragger, is she? So
exactly.
That's completely okay. You were just saying about we've only really scratched the surface with Pro League strats and Clash and all that. And you were talking about G2 as well. I saw them selecting her on Coastline a couple of weeks back, and Eunice was running Clash, and he didn't actually do that great. And then he came off Clash, and I think he was playing Bandit, and he was doing superb. So maybe their banning of her is more that they don't. I don't know, but maybe they feel like they're not quite just yet getting the best out of her, and because they're not getting the best out of her, but yet she still poses that threat with what her ability is. They don't want other teams maybe taking that advantage. So it's just easier for them to ban Clash out than face a team that is getting the best out of her. Because if two teams are getting the best out of an operator, then it doesn't matter if you ban them or not. But if the results are showing that you're clearly not doing very well with her, as I don't think they were on Coastline, then maybe that's why they keep banning her out, straight from the beginning. Or maybe, like you say, Fabian, who's just got some genius strats that he doesn't want to reveal before the finals.
Could be, Pete. That's a great point. We saw Cloud9 versus Cloud9 versus Rogue last night. Really entertaining match. If you guys go back and watch one VOD, watch that one. That was a crazy match. But we saw Laxing on Clash, and him have a couple instances where he was in a 1v1 and it was as simple as a melee, shoot the legs, he's done. That happened to him twice. I want to say almost 2 rounds in a row. So I see where you're coming from there, Pete. Absolutely.
In terms of some of the ways of using her, something I've seen popping up recently, and obviously this is on YouTube, which you never know how effective a technique really is when it's on YouTube, because it might be that every 1 in 10 tries actually works, and then it all ends up in a YouTube compilation and it looks as if it's amazing, but actually 90% of the time it fails. But something I've seen now 2 different players do is when they're switching from the shield to the gun, they will flip around 180 degrees, turn their back, have the shield on their back to soak up some of the bullets, then spin around from there and get a kill with that. It sounds ridiculous, but it worked. Is that just something that's working right now, or because no one's expecting it, or is that potentially actually viable?
I think that's what the kids call a 180 no shield quick scope Kit Kat. Okay, that's what they're calling it these days. To me, okay, first of all, I haven't tried it, but I don't think my sensitivity is high enough to pull that off. It would not go smoothly for me, because I would be going across my whole mouse pad like this and trying to land bullets. But yeah, I mean, I could see where that could throw some people off. But correct me if I'm wrong, that shield doesn't, if you're aiming at her head, that shield on her back doesn't cover her head. It like stops at neck level, I want to say.
It's higher. I think
Okay.
depending on which angle she's looking, like if you're looking horizontal, looking down, looking up, it changes a little bit. But I think if she's looking straight ahead, there's maybe like an inch at the top of her head that is visible, and the rest of the head is actually covered. So I think the most exposed parts are maybe the bottom of the legs, and the head is almost completely protected.
Okay. I think you're right now that I think about it. Actually, yeah, you're right.
And I think maybe if you even look down a little bit, then your head is completely safe. I think.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe they should look into making all shields while they're on their back take the state that they're in when they're dead. Because I've tested this. When you kill Clash and her shield falls on the ground, it does not block bullets at that point.
Okay.
It's basically just you can see it, but it doesn't actually have any bullet blocking characteristics.
Yeah.
So maybe they should make that to where it has that characteristic when it's on her back as well. That would there is a strat that's involved with Monty. Monty, he turns his back and plants a diffuser. People are shooting through the smoke. They hit his shield. There's a very small window that you can actually land bullets on Monty. Would that go away as well? And should that go away?
Yeah, it would, but I don't think it should. I think shields on the back are fine and working as they are on the back.
Pete's. I think let's give this some time. That's where I would go. Let's see, like you said, is this a YouTube 1 out of 100 tries I got right and I'm showing it that, or is this it's very easy to pull off and it's going to affect the balance of it?
Yeah, good question. You wanted to talk a little bit about flash grenades flanked. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
I've got an idea for flash grenades, and this is just an idea. Please don't crucify me, because anytime you know how these go, you guys know how it goes. You present something on your channel that's really, you just want to drive a conversation and start people thinking about this and get some input on it, and people instantly think that you're advocating for it, and that's not what I'm saying. But in my opinion, flash grenades in this game are really, really frustrating. And I would like to start a conversation of, should flash grenades actually be flash and stun grenade combos? So here's what I'm saying. You throw a flash grenade at an enemy, okay? And that enemy turns and looks at a wall, okay? The flash grenade goes off. As long as it wasn't within, I believe, 3 meters, they will not be affected by that flash grenade at all. They turn around and have get a very easy kill on you, because you think, are they flash? Are they not? I have no idea of knowing. You push based upon, hey, I'm trying to flash and enter a room. And what if flash grenades were also stun grenades? So you throw this flash grenade, the enemy turns and looks at the wall. They don't get affected by the flash, but their movement speed would be slowed, so that when they're trying to turn away from that wall and get back to the line of sight that you're getting ready to push, the movement speed would be slower. Okay, so it would in effect still affect them somewhat. They can still see clearly, but it might take them a little bit longer to get their sights back up on that line of sight that you're getting ready to push. Now, if you throw that flash grenade and they don't turn and look at the wall, they're blind, and that blind and stun effect are perfectly correlated to have the same amount of time as an effect. Okay, so while you're flashed and you can't see anything, yes, your movement speed would be slowed, but does it matter? You're completely blind at this point. And I guess you could say it would matter, because what if you're trying to get out of that? You get flashed, so I'm going to go through this rotation hole that I created and get to safety. Now I can't because I'm stunned. This would be a big buff to stun grenades, but I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah. So what would that mean for an operator like Sophia?
Meaning that, okay, this is my special gadget that I have that allows me to stun people, and now operators with flash grenades can do the same thing?
Yeah, that's what a few people, Dennis here, is saying in my chat. Yeah, well, I mean, what would it mean, for her special ability, that you might have, operators out there that just have this secondary gadget that is... Because I do see where you're coming from with it, and it is a mechanic in the game, but by buffing it, are we kind of impacting other operators here?
A couple of things I would say regarding Zofia. A lot of people have argued that Zofia has too much utility already. In fact, we recently saw them get rid of one of her concussions because of that. The other thing that I would say is being able, as Zofia, to shoot it across the map and to use it as a proximity tool. And that's pretty strong. You know what I mean? I wouldn't... Whoever asked that question, I get their point taken. Zofia is not who I would choose to base my battle cry on. I would use Ying as a better example. What would this do to Ying? So now you're telling me a flash grenade is more powerful than Ying's Candelas in a lot of ways, because Ying's Candelas wouldn't have that stun capability. So I get where he's coming from, and that's a very valid point.
Yeah, both very good points, really. I see how sometimes when a flash doesn't work, it can be really frustrating. And at the same time, obviously, yes, if the concussion and flash are timed, does it matter? And I think, yes, it does, kind of, because when you're trying to run away or hide and you're blind, but your sensitivity is different or your movement speed is different, you're not going to know where you're going. You can't really have that control that you still have when you're blinded right now, at least trying to get to cover, giving you a little bit of a chance. So I see that as an issue, and yes, encroaching on operators whose main gadget would then kind of be outclassed because, yeah, for Zofia and even Ella, you have the concussion, but then if anyone with a flash grenade has that plus blindness, they're better. It just gives that additional thing, and compared to Ying, the point you've made, I think, is also valid. Only flash versus flash and concussion. Yeah. Just for that reason, probably encroaching on so many other operators whose main gadget would then become kind of inferior, I would say it would probably be challenging to add that functionality.
Do you think flashbangs need a buff then, or is it consistency of them working? Is it knowing when you flash someone? You know, is that the problem? Because sometimes it can feel as though you flash someone, but they seem to see you very easily because obviously they looked away or...
I don't know, man. It's tough. It might be one of those things where I'm sitting here not advocating. I already said that. It might be one of those things where if they did this, you would see it in game and be really annoyed by it. Because again, am I right in saying that if a flash grenade lands within 3 meters of you, it doesn't matter where you're looking, you're blind?
I think it's 3 meters. Yeah.
Maybe they extend that out to 5 meters. Maybe that's something they should try on a test server. Because here's what started this. Okay, so Bank, they're defending the lockers downstairs, and that objective, there's always that mirror that's on the wall. They're looking into the site where you plant. Okay, and then a lot of times people thermite that wall and try to get that plant right inside the wall. I'm upstairs, an open area. I open that hatch, and that hatch, it drops down into a place that you can put a lot of pressure on that mirror. So I, through that hatch, dropped 2 flash grenades as Habana. Me standing on top of that hatch, get flashed. I'm blind. I have to wait before I can drop. I drop, Mira just kills me instantly. In the kill cam, I see Mira just turns, looks this way, turns back, easy kill as I dropped. I was more blind than Mira, even though those flash grenades were 100% closer to Mira than they were to me.
And that was
I think there's a good shout for that. Sorry, I think there's a good shout for stuff like that going in the TTS, even if it's not something they're too sure about that wanting to implement in the game. They could do a bit more with the TTS with little changes like that. But I think it could be frustrating affecting someone's movement speed like that. I wasn't especially a big fan with and I don't think, largely speaking, a lot of the community were a big fan of the mechanic whereby your movement speed is slowed down, Yeah. And I wonder if you had one of these mice whereby you can up the DPI, could you press that and turn quicker?
You could slow movement speed without affecting sensitivity, though. Those are 2 different things. And Ella's concussion grenades and Zophia's do affect sensitivity and movement speed. What if you didn't affect sensitivity but only affected movement speed? I think that would be, closer to where it should be, personally. But yeah, you're right. But I think what you're talking about with the mouse and the DPI change, it changes your sensitivity to a random amount. Am I not correct in saying that?
I think it's fixed, but lower. I think it just slows it down.
Okay. I was under the impression that it changes it to a random range that is slower, but you wouldn't be able to perfectly, hit a button and get your DPI back up to where it would normally be every single time.
Which kind of makes sense.
That's one solution. I remember this being a discussion. I never tested it myself, but I saw people talking about it, and I think people tested it and tried to mess with the sensitivity, but what happened is that it was implemented in a way that it limits your movement speed. There's a hard limit, so no matter what your sensitivity, no matter how quickly you can normally move, you can't go past a certain speed. That's how I think they countered that.
I've got another just a fantastic idea that's only capable of coming out of such a brilliant mind up here.
Oh, yeah.
What if the buff to the flash grenade was just that when you hold it, two options. One, you hold it for a longer period of time, and then it behaves like it currently does. You can bank it off a wall, it lands on the ground, makes that quick sound, then explodes. The other is if you pull it and throw it instantly, it grenades, it impacts, it goes off on impact as soon as it touches, which would prevent somebody from hearing the sound and looking away.
I'm not sure it's really necessary.
I'm confused by that a little bit, especially since holding it. But when you don't hold it, it goes off quicker. But when you do
King's
hold
Candelas. King's Candelas. The longer you hold them, the longer it takes for them to go off. It would be a similar mechanic to that,
and it'd be like,
but it would only have two settings.
You could
it would only have two settings.
You could just remove the impact mode that it has at the moment, which is kind of nonsensical anyway, and just make it
useful to bang off of walls. Though, if you're in a doorway, you bang it off the door frame, it goes on the other side, and that's useful in some situations.
But then exchange it with a simple timer so that you can, when you hold, you let the spoon go. And the longer you hold it, eventually it'll go off like a hand grenade. And you can cook it. You can choose to cook it and throw it, and it will go off in the air or go off immediately. Or you can throw it immediately, and it will go off pretty quickly. Maybe even...
I love that. I really do.
It would give you
like that.
The flexibility, same as with grenades. Don't give it the same timer as grenades. Make it really quick anyway, but you can hold it for half a second and then throw, and then it will go off in the air as it comes in or something like that.
And you could air detonate it as well.
Yeah.
According to what you're saying, you can detonate it in the air. And there's a skill element there. You have to learn the timing of it. It still gives you the flexibility of using it. I really like that. Let's do it. Come on, Ubi. Make it happen.
Yeah, there you go.
Problem solved.
I think with that we can maybe move on to a next segment and talk a little bit about what we've been playing this week. I think, Flanked, you've been playing a lot of Siege.
I've been playing a completely different game, and that is called Solo Queue in the Silver and Gold Limbo Hell, and that is Rainbow Six Siege. But yeah, it's a different game that I've been playing, and it's been an experience. Let's just say that. And I'm still there. I'm still in that silver gold limbo. In previous seasons, I have solo queued an account, at least one account, whether it be on PS4 or PC, to platinum every season. And this season, that is not happening. And it's been an experience, man. There's the level of competition in Siege is dramatically increasing over the last few seasons. That's one thing I've learned. And I feel some of the pain of the people who say, "Hey, I'm in silver. I drop, between 8 and 9 kills every game, and I just cannot get out of silver." That's very real. The fact is, when you solo queue, you are rolling dice, and you might get a good team, and you might not. And if those dice don't land right for you, you can do whatever you want as a player, and you can I think honestly, I think I'm a silver player right now with like a 1.75 KD. So, that's how it can go. And I'm trying to win. I don't want anybody to get the false impression. I'm not trying to be in silver just so I can create content or relate with the silver players. I'm really not trying to do that. I'm trying to win. And, it's tough.
How many matches have you played?
A good bit. I think I'm down to earning 60 elo per MMR per game. So, you start out at 100. That's a good bit. I can look it up real quick. I'll get a firm answer.
Play that throughout the season and see if you can get it into gold, maybe. Well,
the reason I did it's a new account that I purchased. The reason I did it is, one, I like the solo queue whenever I stream because it allows me to focus on the chat and interact with them more, not have to worry about call outs and stuff like that. Two, I can do this, and I wanted to have an account that I can play ranked in and not worried about having a 5-stack, not worrying about my rank, and just play anytime. Because I found myself not playing as much as I wanted to because I didn't want to play casual and I didn't have a 5-stack. So I wanted to have an account where I could just get in, play in ranked, work on stuff, and not worry about my rank. And 3, I wanted an account that I could stream on and not have to worry about getting stream sniped.
How long did it take you to get to rank 20?
actually longer than I thought. I mean, several, like, I think I want to say about 4 streaming sessions of about 4 hours a piece. So yeah, right around like probably between 12 and 16 hours, somewhere around there of game time.
Solo queuing is frustrating. It's pretty much all I do, you know, solo queuing. And it is because, you know, I'm not the greatest player, but it's when just people do the daftest things. And it's like, really? You know, why are you doing that?
Yeah, when you're not really actively communicating. I mean, there is the in-game push to talk, but when you're not in the same team, when you're not using voice comms, you don't use that as often. There is that extra step. I now have to click a button to speak. Sometimes your teammates will never, ever speak back until they've died, and then they start complaining or something like that. That's when they'll start speaking up. Is after we've lost. That's when the comms come through. So, It is completely different experience. Even if you were playing with the same team but had active voice comms, I think you'd get much more out of it just by being able to make the call-outs quicker, by having that information. And that extra level of information just makes such a difference rather than being dependent solely on yourself. And that's
100%.
completely independent from having players that you synergize with, that you've practiced with, that are really, really good. Completely independently from that, already the fact that you don't have that active communication is, I think, something that's always going to make solo queuing challenging.
Yeah, you could just take a load of silvers, team them all together, put them in voice comms for a day, and they would probably be golds that are all solo queuing and just running off and doing their own thing.
Yep.
My favourite thing is when I'm solo queue, which is all the time, is someone not talking and then they talk to give you Ash's hit. Yeah, but where is she? You know, that's not a call out.
We're in the last round, and they finally make a call, and you're like, where has that been? You know, that is great. I looked up my stat. I played 49 ranked matches at this point. And my win-loss is just below 50%. I think I'm at like 49.7% win-loss. Here's what I run into a lot too, because of the time of day that I play, like using this account during the day. Today, I played 2 matches before we hopped on here. The first match, I played 2 guys from EU. I looked up their stats on EU. He'd been both of them have been Plat 2 this season. They're Plat 2 in EU right now, and were Diamond in the previous season. And they're playing against Silvers in NA. Okay, and I talked so much smack to him the whole time. Like every time I kill him, I was like, EU Plat 2 equals NA Silver, which I guess you could. I don't know. That's probably not fair. I probably shouldn't do that because I can play at the platinum range in NA as well. Clearly, I need a team in order to do that, as I'm proving this season. But and then the second match that I played today was a full team of EU players. Again, I looked up their stats, and at least one of them was a Plat 3, and they're playing against Silvers in NA. And I think it has to do with the time of day. It's during the day, during NA, and it's evening over there. But yeah, I mean, it's tough, man. Like, a lot of the EU guys who come over, they're playing at a much higher level than than your average silver NA player, and they're just coming over here as unranked players and making life pretty difficult on a guy who's trying to get out of silver.
That's, I think, the problem with the resetting of the rank every season, because if you haven't played ranked at all, if you're going into a different region or in your own region and you're only just starting this season, you start out on 2,500 MMR, which is the very bottom border of Gold 4 to Silver 1. So everyone is at that range when you start. And of course, if you're a Diamond player, you go in and you're facing people who, if you don't start playing ranked until mid-season, when most players have already been playing ranked, you will have the players at your level who are Platinum, Diamond, and so on. They will already have risen to the top. They already have high MMR. You're going to be matched against people who've already been playing, who maybe have 50, 60, 100 matches, and they are genuinely silver gold players, and here you are as someone who isn't ranked yet but gets lumped in with them. That, I think, is maybe more the problem than anything region related.
Yeah. That first match that I played against the 2 EU guys, both of which were Plat 2s in EU, the one guy was unranked in NA, the other was silver 2 in NA. So that's tough to swallow. It really is. You got two guys who are playing at Plat and in previous season Diamond level in EU playing against North American silvers who are all solo queuing. Like we were all solo. So that's tough to swallow. It really is.
Do you think they should just have a running rank then? So if you hit Plat this season, you're Plat next season. I suppose the reason they reset it is for people to come back and then to try and reach that rank again. It pulls players back into the game. And also, if you're someone that got silver last season, then it gives you something to try for. Where with the fresh start, you can then obviously go and try for gold or what have you. So I guess that's why they do it, the whole rank reset.
Yeah, I see the argument on both sides. I don't know.
Yeah, I do.
I don't know.
I can see benefits.
Yeah, I think that's just, it's with that dual approach. They've publicly stated several times that your rank is not supposed to be a reward, and it's not even based on individual player skill. It's based on how much you win and lose, which is dependent on so many things apart from skill. Obviously, skill helps to win, but like we said, if you get into solo queues and there's 4 other players, if they don't match up, you can frag out as much as you want. You're still not going to win as much as you maybe should. So there's that approach that publicly they're saying this is not a reward, this is not a player skill, and then actually though you're getting rewarded with a little charm at the end of each season, and it gets reset each season. I think absolutely. If there was just a running matchmaking level or a running ranking, you would just be playing mostly against players who are at your level the entire time. You would avoid that weird phase, certainly maybe even for the first month of any new season, or at least sort of the first week or two, where, I mean, imagine the reset happens and then G2 come in as a 5 stack and they go into ranked, and they're ranked right on the border of gold 4, silver 1, just like everyone else, and here in you come as, I don't know, a silver gold player, and you run into them because the matchmaking system has been reset and they haven't managed to rise to the top yet. It creates, with every reset, with every new season, it creates a period of poor matchmaking, of unbalanced matchmaking.
What if you had to solo queue your placements? Sorry. I mean,
people wouldn't enjoy that though, would they?
It's 10
If you want to go in and play with friends, you could. One solution might be to have like a global rank that's permanent, and you're building and growing all the time, and then a seasonal rank, which is your for show rank. Maybe you could have 2 run concurrently, but it's what they obviously use for matchmaking as well. But your global one, I would assume, is the one that they would then use for matchmaking, because that's a better representation of how good you are as a player, although arguably it isn't really, because it's just a representation of, the fact that you're going into games in a squad, with other players. So perhaps that's one way they could get around it. But as I said earlier, I feel that the reason they probably reset it is to get people to come back each season on top of the DLC operators, and then try to achieve the rank. Keeps people playing.
Yeah, I think that's the whole reason why there are charms and why the rank is publicly visible. I think the game itself would be better and more enjoyable if the rank wasn't visible and if there were no charms associated with it. I know it's what drives a lot of people to go into ranked. It's a motivation for a lot of players, but I think the argument could be made you'd be having better games if that wasn't shown. If you just have a matchmaking system in the background doing its thing, and that was that, because I think one of the side effects of having rank as a reward and ranked as a status symbol is that there is a win-at-all-cost culture, which results in cheating, in boosting, in smurfing fake accounts down to copper, and then teaming up to cheat the matchmaking system, which results in whatever other methods, stream sniping, anything people can do and get away with to try to win is currently something people will do in Rainbow Six Siege, because it is about the result and not the competition itself for a lot of players.
But is there an alternative to that system, though? Because that competition is important for people. That achievement is important to keep people playing the game. So I don't know if there's not an alternative that immediately springs to mind for me, other than showing people what rank they have.
I would have to think that the ranking system, where you get your charms, and this has to be positive for player retention. It has to be, and that would be negatively affected by not showing that and not putting it on public display to a certain degree. But I agree that for the time that you are playing this game, it would certainly create probably a more hospitable environment for all players involved. I just don't know how long those really happy players would stick with the game.
So maybe a system where you have a global matchmaking system, a global as in not in terms of the regions, but something that is permanent and goes across the seasons, but then having a layer on top of that isn't used for matchmaking, that can still somehow measure achievement in the game and give a player a rank and a little badge based on that, rather than the actual matchmaking. Because at the moment, it's not personal skill or performance, it's how many times you win or lose. And if I queue up with 4 members of G2 as an old potato, I'll still get my diamond every season, no bother. Yeah, no problem at all. But that doesn't mean I'm good. That just means I'm playing with really good friends. So,
yeah, basically that. Yeah, something. The little medal system each season, which shows people what they've got, but then a global permanent ranking in game. But you can always, you'll try to build that up as well. It'd be good if you saw that and you could try and grow that.
Yeah. Certainly interesting, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to mention here, we don't have to talk about because I'm really excited to hear about your experience with Assassin's Creed Rogue. But I had an interesting interaction with Epi on Twitter, talking about this matchmaking, because again, this solo queue and me being at these levels, like, it's opened up my eyes to a lot of things. And I put on Twitter, and I was really just joking. I said something along the lines of there's more that goes into ranked matchmaking than just MMR. Is it experience level ? And then I put asterisk. This is only a conspiracy theory that I choose to look into to make myself feel better. Epi actually responds to that, who's a community manager for Rainbow Six Siege. He responds saying, if you're playing with a group, it will affect it to a certain degree. I'm paraphrasing here, guys. If you're playing with a group, it will affect it to a certain degree, but it is not. But clearance level has nothing to do with it. Somebody responds to that down the line here and asks him to go into more depth. And he says, if you're playing with a group, your MMR is inflated to compensate for that. Okay. And again, I'm paraphrasing those words, but that was enlightening to me. There is more to ranked matchmaking, and that's confirmation. There's more to ranked matchmaking than simply your MMR number. So what defines a group? Is it 2 people playing together? Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 5?
Is it adjusted? If it's 2, it's slightly adjusted. Right. If it's 5, it's adjusted more.
Right.
That would make sense.
So, I mean, that's opened up a whole new realm of possibilities in the way that I'm looking at who I'm playing with and against in Siege. If you are you better off to play with 2 of your buddies and a 3 stack who can both hold their own than you would be to play in a 5 stack with 2 of your buddies that are good and 2 of your buddies that are just there to have fun? Because they're going to increase your MMR, and you're going to be playing against tougher competition because you're partied up with them. yet they're not going to be able to hold their own. Would you, in effect, be better off to pick up 2 random people who have earned their MMR to that level by solo queuing? If they're solo queuing now, they solo queue probably quite often. And would you maybe have a stronger team with those randoms?
Hard to say, and I think it would probably depend on a case-by-case basis, but I do think it's really interesting to see, because I did, you remember this, we talked about it, I did quite a lot of research on the matchmaking system, and this is not something I found mentioned anywhere, that it actually takes into account whether you're solo queuing or playing in a group, and it adjusts your matchmaking based on that to try and at least help solo queuers out a little bit. I think it's interesting to know that that's working in the background, and I think it's a good thing that they're trying to compensate a little bit. I'd not always also question though how well it's working, because technically, if it was working perfectly, if you went in and solo queued, you should be having a match that for you personally is just as difficult as if you go in with a group and your MMR's adjusted and you're getting tougher opponents. Technically, if it was working perfectly, you shouldn't feel a difference at all in terms of solo queuing and playing as a group because of the adjusted matchmaking. And, well, as you led off earlier, solo queuing is a very different experience. So if it's there, it's good and it's interesting, and it's good to see that there is an effort to be made, or an effort being made, to keep the matchmaking system as sort of valuable as possible in terms of getting you competitive matches, but I'd question whether it's actually working all that well.
I would be interested to know if this is new this season, because I really feel I know that I'm an emotional guy. I know that I love to blame my failures on other people. I recognize these weaknesses in me, but I swear this season's been more difficult, man. It has. This season has been more difficult than previous seasons, in my opinion.
Last season was already more difficult. I think there is a trend in that it's becoming more and more difficult, more and more competitive, even at the lower levels, even at the low platinum and the gold and even the silver levels. I think just in general, the player base of Rainbow Six is maturing to the point where even the sort of middle of the pack players, the gold level, are still extremely good and getting better and better.
Does it work that if you have more competition at the top, the overall player base is getting better, so there's more competition around top plat and diamond? Does that mean that, say, if you were plat 2 last season, but there's more competition there, you might be plat 3 next season because of that? Okay, so that does make sense then, because obviously over time people will get better at the game. You know, in 2 years, if people are still playing the game, not only will they know maps better than they do now, but they will have better aim and so on and so forth. So it kind of makes sense that the game does constantly get more difficult at all ranks, because those that would have usually placed at a certain rank, there's more competition at that rank because everyone's played more time, and therefore that filters down through the whole entire ranking system. So if there's more competition at gold 1 and you're usually gold 1 and you're struggling to get gold 1, then obviously you're going to drop down and you're going to then provide more competition for the other people.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah, there is some logic in that. Can I just throw something at you?
Go on.
ID clip 1993, and I know we're not at the Q&A bit, but he got a little bit upset in my chat, so I don't want to just seem to be ignoring people that aren't agreeing with us. So ID clip 1993 says, most people aren't 5 stacks. A lot of plats are legit players that are good, and this narrative is annoying. So, like, I don't think anyone here was trying to put down anyone that is a genuine, just is plat or is diamond or anything like that. But I think it is largely agreed that it's easier to move up through the ranks if you're playing with people that you're communicating with, and not just random people on the internet who aren't using push to talk or aren't communicating. I mean, I think that's just a generally agreed principle. And if you do know personally lots of people in Plat who are solo queuing, then all credit to them. I'm not diminishing. Yeah, I'm not diminishing their achievements, but I just think it's generally agreed that it is easier to move up through the ranks if you're playing with your friends. But that's not to diminish anyone that is there.
No, the opposite even, because if you are solo queuing into Plat, getting together with a 5-stack where you're getting call-outs, you're getting communication, all that would mean is I cannot see any scenario where someone who can get into Plat solo queuing gets together with a 5-stack, is getting call-outs on enemies pushing him, can know where to go, which flank routes are clear, yada, 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 all that advantage that you get from good communication. I can't envision a scenario where someone who gets into Plat solo goes into a 5-stack and does worse. There's no way you're going to go in and not do as well. How would you do less well with info from your teammates?
A couple of things I'll mention on that topic. I agree with you 100%. But we've recently learned that there is a different matchmaking variable involved here. So let's say that person who solo queues to Plat 3 gets in a 5-stack with other Plat 3s. Now how much is their MMR boosted? Are they going to be playing a different level of competition? I doubt it's that significant to where that person is going to struggle. But there is definitely something of an adjustment period for a person who solo queues getting into a 5-stack. And first of all, learning to call out. And second of all, dealing with call outs. Because when you play in a 5-stack in this game, your headset is constantly, your sound is constantly bombarded by other people talking. And if you are the type of player who, as a solo queuer, has really relied on sound whoring and having all those sound cues lead to kills, a lot of times when playing with a 5-stack, you lose a piece of that. And it takes an adjustment period. No doubt, 99 out of 100 players will adjust to that over a period of time, but there is an adjustment period to dealing with people talking in your ear constantly.
Okay, yes, fair point. Fair points. Nevertheless, I feel really confident in saying that, look, if you can get into Plat and you're solo queuing, I think you could do even better, or you could get to, you maybe not, well, yes, you would do better to get to higher ranks. So you would do even better, you would win even more if you're playing with people you're communicating with, playing with people that you're coordinating with. Like sometimes it's not just about the communication, it's about picking operators and being set up for a certain strategy that then just really works, rather than, okay, everyone kind of picks an operator they feel like running right now, and maybe sometimes they'll be talking about, can you please bring a Thatcher or something like that. But I think it doesn't mean that playing in a team makes you a better player or anything like that. It means that you have a better chance of winning your matches, which will rank you up. And I think I don't quite understand why you would be offended if you can make it to that level on your own, because the argument is that if you're playing with a group of people you know well, you would arguably do even better and get to an even higher rank. So maybe your rank as a platinum solo queuer is actually depressed. Maybe if you were in a regular 5-stack, you'd actually be a Plat 1 or even like diamond, and you just don't know it because you don't get that opportunity. That's the argument I would make there. And
that's really what I've said about what I've discovered about the silvers and low golds during this solo queue experience. A lot of those players are platinum players with the right 4 players around them. They have the gun skill and they have the game sense. Being a silver and gold does not mean that you are a bad player in any way, shape, or form. It can mean a lot of different things, okay? But there's plenty of players at that level that will just straight up ruin your day. If you go in there as a Plat 3 and you play against a group of silvers and you think you're just going to have an easy time, don't be surprised if you walk away with a few bruises, okay? I'm just going to tell you that right now.
And that's based on personal experience.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, I think hopefully that clears it up. No offense intended.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, then maybe let's move on a little bit. Still talking about games we've been playing, and I really want to take a bit of a swipe away from multiplayer first-person shooters and talk a little bit about two games I've been playing, and that is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which came out a couple of weeks ago, and I've been playing for a couple of weeks, and also Assassin's Creed Odyssey coming out on Friday, which I've been playing since yesterday. I've been sort of desperately trying to dig into the game a bit so I can talk a little bit about those and give you my thoughts really on what I think. So let's start off with Tomb Raider, since that's been out for a little bit. And sort of my experience with that, I've been streaming the whole thing, and I'm going to continue streaming that game. So some people in my stream will probably have seen me experiencing that firsthand. But let me sort of try and summarize what I've felt about that game. To me, it's basically a continuation and an improvement of the recent rebooted series that started, I think, in 2013 with Tomb Raider, and then went through Rise of the Tomb Raider and now Shadow. It basically takes what those games did and just does some things a lot better and some things a little better. And I suppose there's also maybe some drawbacks. So just let me start off with things I think the game does really well. The graphics are stunning. The game looks absolutely beautiful. On my PC, I'm running it at 1440p on the highest graphics settings, and it kind of, I mean, it's sort of like 50 to 60 FPS, which isn't stellar if you're talking about a competitive game, but for a single-player story-based game is perfectly fine, and it just looks absolutely amazing. I think something that they've done that is quite new and innovative, both for the Tomb Raider series and like these kind of adventure exploration games in general, like I'm also thinking of Uncharted in that same group. Something they've done is they've split the difficulty setting into two. So you have a one, which is the general game difficulty in terms of mostly the combat, and then you have a separate setting for the puzzle difficulty. So
that's cool.
Puzzles, we're used to puzzles in these kind of games, both in Tomb Raider and in Uncharted, climbing around these ancient tombs, pushing buttons, levers, and things start moving, raising water, all of that. We're used to that, but Shadow of the Tomb Raider really doubles down on puzzles. They feature much more heavily than past games have done. And yeah, I'm playing the game on hard, which is the second most difficult setting for both combat and the puzzles. And the puzzles are challenging. They're actually, it's not just you walk in, you see the wall, you climb, and you push a button, and that's it. I think puzzles in the past have been a little bit simplistic. Here, they are actual puzzles where you need to find clues, you need to go through your journal and look at photographs and other items and find other things that you can then use to help you solve what's going on. It's actually been quite a lot of fun solving those. So that's definitely an improvement. I think I would also say the map design is a little bit better, because Tomb Raider is, I would say, almost a quasi-open world game, right? It pretends to be open world, but it really kind of is pretty linear. One thing they've done, I think, quite well here is they've designed these maps, even though it is still a linear game, in a way that makes you feel it is open. Like there's a bit right at the beginning of the game where you crash land in the Peruvian jungle in a plane. And I remember walking out from that crash and walking into the jungle, and it just felt as if I could walk off in any direction. And I did that because I was walking, and there seemed to be an obvious path that the game was guiding me towards, and I just turned left at a 90-degree angle and walked into bushes, thinking I'm going to hit an invisible wall here, I'm going to come up to a cliff or trees, or something's going to stop me and bring me back around, but maybe there's something hidden here, maybe there's something to collect. And I just ended up walking through these bushes, and the game continued, which was just really weird and surprising. So I think they've done that quite well in sort of hiding the fact of it still being a linear game, even though it pretends to be open world. So that's quite good. And maybe like a minor and last positive that I thought the game has is you can dress Lara up in all kinds of outfits for this game, outfits for the previous two games, and even going beyond that, I think there's outfits for Tomb Raider 2 where you can literally walk around as this blocky character, which is quite funny to see in such a sort of well-designed and beautiful game where every main character has had their face motion captured, and it's just so expressive. It's like you're almost watching an animated film in a lot of places. choices, but then you can also go back and play as one of the original outfits. Just good fun there for sure. To balance it out, maybe a few negatives. There's a stealth mechanic in this game, which was also in the last one, in that you can use your Batman sense, basically, because Batman was the first game, I think, that did that. But here, I think it's called Survival Sense. Assassin's Creed had the same thing. The colors all change, and you see stuff highlighted. In the previous game, you had that if an enemy was highlighted in yellow, it meant he was not being seen or heard by other enemies. So you could stealth take down that enemy and get away with it. And anyone who was marked in red was an enemy that was either in the visual direction of another person or at least close enough to them to be heard, so you wouldn't be able to stealth take them down. One thing I've noticed in this game is that sometimes enemies that are marked in yellow, you'll go to take them down, and by the time you're finished taking them down, someone will still see you because they're coming closer, or because the animation of the takedown actually pushes you close enough to an enemy that it doesn't work. And that is really annoying when you think you're doing the right thing and you're using the mechanic and it backfires on you, and now you've been discovered. So that's, it's something that surprises me because it worked in the game before and doesn't quite work the way I would have expected to. Maybe it's by design, maybe not, I don't know. Some other things, there's side quests in the game, which is new, and I guess a good thing, if you call side quests a good thing, because, they tend to be mundane fetch quests, find something for me, kill these people, kill those animals, whatever it is. But they're a little bit confusing sometimes in how you can follow them. You have like a quest log, but you can't really choose which quest to follow and which you can't. So I've been accepting these side quests, but not really able to focus on them or focus on them individually. So that's a bit confusing and could be better. There's a whole bunch of resource management in the game that is also not really clarified. You gather resources like animal hides and metals and stuff like that you need to create and modify your gear. But some of it is just to sell to vendors, and it's not quite clear which is which. And I think maybe last and possibly the most important part is that the pacing of the story is a little bit odd, in that you find there's like two huge artifacts that are the focus of this game, and you find those pretty early on. And it then just makes you wonder where there's no like single goal that drives you through the story. And there's these odd, like over-dramatic cutscenes where the game just slows down and the characters start talking about their dead parents so many times. It takes you from a fun action game into this really heavy drama that I find almost a little bit unnecessary and overbearing. So there's all of that as one gush of opinion. If I had to sum it up, I'd still say if you like those kinds of games and if you're a fan of Tomb Raider, definitely something worth looking into. I've been enjoying it, despite maybe some of the smaller flaws, but definitely interesting to look at.
How many rogue beards out of 10?
I'd give it 8.
Ooh, wow.
I think I'd give it 8. Yeah, maybe 7.5.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Pete.
So just going back a little bit there, but you said, the game isn't completely open world, and there was sort of a path for you to follow, but you took a 90-degree turn and went left, and you were going through the jungle. What happened? I mean, did you reach an invisible wall?
No, I didn't, which was really bizarre.
You can't just keep going forever, though. What happened?
I mean, maybe it was luck. Maybe that was the way I was meant to go. But yeah, I just kept walking through these bushes, and then a path appeared that was perpendicular to the path I was sure was the main path, and I just ended up coming up to this ledge, and the story continued from there. So maybe I just got kind of lucky, because I mean, when there's a map that you can look at. When you go to the map, you can see that there are sort of these bowls in the map where you have an open area and you can walk around, and those are connected with corridors essentially. Even though you're playing outside, the maps are all these sort of linear corridors for the most part, and then sometimes you have these bowl areas where you can walk around a little bit, but they're not really huge. So it still is that, but the way they've designed those areas is to really give the illusion, much better than any game I've ever seen before, of actually being open world and actually having the freedom to go. I'm sure that if you try to go certain regions, there'll be a sheer cliff face, or there'll be a cliff face up or something. You can't continue in those areas. But they guide the player in such a way and hide those areas in such a way that really makes you almost forget that you're playing a linear game, if that makes sense.
Did you play many of the Uncharted series?
I played all of them apart from the last one.
I've had a hard time getting back into Tomb Raider after Uncharted. So I guess would you put this on par or ahead of the last Uncharted you played?
So the way I would always describe it is that Uncharted took the Tomb Raider idea and improved upon it just so much more. But what I would say that Tomb Raider's been doing with sort of the reboot, certainly, and maybe even more the last two games, is that they've circled back around and they've actually looked at what Uncharted have been doing well, and they've started incorporating that back into their game. So it's kind of gone like this full circle of innovation of games and developers copying each other. And I think they've done well to sort of catch up with the standards that were set by Uncharted. Yeah. What was the last Tomb Raider you tried?
The one before this, I believe.
Okay.
Now that was on PS4, and it's been a couple years, right?
Yeah, Rise of the Tomb Raider, right?
Yes, I do believe yes. Okay. Which I enjoyed. I thought it's good. It's good. I just I don't think it's as good as the Uncharted. I didn't think that game was as good as the most recent Uncharted I played, and I've noticed that. Yeah, just kind of, I guess for me, the Uncharted series has kind of stole the thunder from Tomb Raider. And I have a lot of nostalgia with Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider was one of the first games I remember playing on the original PlayStation and just really like blew my mind. I remember getting Tomb Raider 2 for PC, the one that was in Venice. I believe that was Tomb Raider 2 or 3. And just loving that game. Like I've got so much nostalgia for the series. So I might try it out based upon your recommendation there. 8 beards out of 10 is... Keep in mind,
like I've been enjoying them. I like them. Yeah, Uncharted certainly did a few things. Now, bear in mind, I didn't play Uncharted 4, which I hear was amazing. Like I played 1, 2, and 3. I haven't played the most recent one, so I can't compare it to that. But compared to the older PS3 era Uncharted's, the story is possibly the weaker point here because it is a little bit muddled, because it isn't quite as focused. But yeah, it looks stunning. The puzzles are great. I think if you're into that kind of game, it's still. I enjoyed it. Let's say that way. I can't guarantee it'll turn you around. It'll change your mind. But I personally, I'm having a good time with it. Notwithstanding the fact that it does have some weaknesses, which I listed.
That's the 2 beards. So
exactly.
Fair play.
And now we're getting a little bit close on time. Let me talk a little bit about Assassin's Creed as well. So this is actually out today for anyone who's ordered, I think, the Gold Edition and the Ultimate Edition. They get early access and they can be playing today as well. So if you have that, you probably already had a go at it. Let me just give you a bit of a background. It is set during the time of the Peloponnesian War, I believe. It's the war between Sparta and Athens in 431 BC. And you play as basically a mercenary that is neutral in between the two. Let me compare it to Assassin's Creed Origins. I think I spoke about Assassin's Creed Origins a few episodes ago, and one of the things I mentioned as a downside is that Origins has these RPG elements in it that were maybe not fleshed out enough. Like, they took away from what Assassin's Creed used to be and made it more of an RPG, and it wasn't maybe quite far enough with Origins. This basically takes Origins and takes it further into an RPG. This is more of an open world RPG than anything else. It really...
That sounds exciting.
It really is. They flesh it out. There's the way you get your missions now is you speak to people as before, but instead of you speak to the person, there's a cutscene with dialogue and you go on. You have dialogue trees. You can choose what to say to the people and how to say it. You have choices sometimes that you make during that dialogue that will influence the story one way or another, and that will even go as far as to influence the outcome of the game. So the game has 9 endings, 9 different endings, depending on choices you make throughout the game. And even from mission to mission, there can be missions where you make a choice that will decide the life of certain people that will then later appear again or not appear again. So there's consequence. It almost reminds me a little bit of the BioWare RPGs, where you have these consequences in there that will affect the story. And also, I think, the type of upgrades you can have. Obviously, your character still levels as it did before. Now, because it's set in Greece, you have a ship to get around between islands. So ship combat is really back from before. I think one of the things that players like the most. And you can upgrade your ship. You can kidnap individual people. Like if you see a random enemy, you can knock them out instead of killing them, and then offer them to join your crew. And they will. So you can crew your ship. You can upgrade various weapons on your ship and abilities. It's done more. Your weapons are customizable in that you can take them to a blacksmith to engrave and give them extra powers. So definitely a lot of RPG stuff in there, and a lot of sort of things you can find that are not as guided as you would normally think. Sure, you have a journal that shows you all your quests and will show you normally where to go, but there are quests where you have to speak to people and they will tell you things about that quest that you didn't know. So they'll tell you you need to find a ship, but that ship, as you're speaking to people, you'll find out that the ship is docked in the southeastern corner of this region, of that island. So rather than having a quest marker, it's more natural, and it will force you to explore more, certainly, than any other Assassin's Creed game before, and actually more than many RPG games in that. So that's, I think, something quite interesting. They've changed the combat a little bit compared to Origins, and that was, I think, one of the things I'd cited as a weakness of Origins as well, is that the combat was kind of more spammy rather than flow-based, rather than having the counters and blocks that you had maybe in past games. It's not changed a whole lot, but one thing they've done is they've taken the shield out, and they've instead put in sort of a counter ability, and that takes the combat a little bit back towards that kind of flow-based that I mentioned, that is more like Batman, like the Batman games innovated. So that's a good thing. Something that I'm maybe not quite as convinced on, to balance things out a little bit, is that you get to play in the entirety of Greece. So the Greek mainland and all of the islands, essentially, all of the major islands are there as a playable region, which is interesting and sounds great, right? You can play anywhere in Greece. Your adventure will take you over the entire country. And that's great and all, but what that means is they've had to really seriously scale down the size of the country itself. I noticed this because you start out on an island called Kefalonia, and that's a neighboring island to Ithaca, which is the island where Odysseus ruled. He was the king of Ithaca. In real life, I've looked this up, those two islands are 2 kilometers apart. So that's an awful long way. In the game, it's 150 meters. So you can swim from one island to the other, no bother at all. So they've really, really shrunken down the land size in terms of how large it would really be. And yeah, I suppose I'm kind of neutral on it. It's nice to have all of Greece there, but at the same time, it's just this weird version of Greece that is only like 7.5% the actual size. And I almost wonder, what if they instead had focused on just a certain region? Keep the map the same size, but now you're playing just in a certain region on the border between Athens and Sparta, where a lot of the fighting takes place, and you play that region rather than playing the whole of Greece. I don't know. I suppose anyone can have their own opinion on that. Like I said, for me, it's neither a positive nor a negative. It's more of a neutral thing. that, okay, I appreciate being able to get on my ship and just sail to any island within the Greek peninsula there or around it. On the other hand, yeah, it's not real anymore. It's now a tiny, tiny fantasy version of Greece. A few other things, like there's a few bits that I think still need polishing or that aren't quite as polished. We're used to kill animations from Assassin's Creed in the past, where when you take down the last enemy, there's like this smooth, amazing kill animation where you stab him and then knock him over and then chop off his head or something like that. Those are still in there, but they're kind of messy now. Like, more often than not, your character will just stab the air and then be wrestling around with a guy who's not even on your spear. It's just, yeah, the two characters, when it goes into one of those animations, aren't married up quite properly. It's a cosmetic flaw, and it's something that isn't really a huge problem, but it's something that used to work in past games and was better in past games than it is here. It's a tiny, tiny thing, because you only see those kill animations on the very last enemy you kill, but there you go. And I've seen some instances where clothes are slightly clipping into the character, so a bit not quite right aligned. Again, a minor point for a third-person game, because you never quite see that detail anyway, but it is there. So there is that. A few changes they've made. There's now a notoriety system, so if you steal stuff from people, before you could walk into any person's house and just grab stuff and no one would say anything. Now that counts as stealing, and there'll actually be a notoriety that builds up, and as that builds up higher, there are groups of bounty hunters, depending on the level you're in at the game and how far you've progressed. They'll be neutral towards you until you reach a certain notoriety and a bounty on your head is put out, and then they will become enemies of yours. They will start hunting you. So that's it's an improvement, I think, on the system that was in Assassin's Creed Origins, where you also had bounty hunters coming after you, but they were just after you all the time as part of the story. Here, it's dependent on your behavior, which I find is interesting to see. And there's also a war system between, obviously, Athens and Sparta are going to war. You start right at the beginning of this war, of this civil war, you could call it, although they're different kingdoms, so maybe it's just a war. And you, as a neutral party, will affect the different regions and how they play against each other and who is controlling them. So that I find quite interesting. And those are the major things. Ship combat, like I said, is still there, but it's changed, because now you're 400 years before the birth of Christ, so you're a long, long time ago. Your ship has a sail, but during combat, it's actually, you take down the sail and it's rowing. You use your triremes, or you use the rowers of your triremes rather than being under sail, which is a major shift from previous Assassin's Creed, where you were always under sail and you had cannons, of course, where now you only have archers and javelin throwers. So that's changed and made it different, but yeah, in a good way. It's interesting. It's something new and fresh. The skill tree has been changed a little bit, in that you don't have as many passive abilities anymore as you did in Origins. Now you can unlock more active abilities. So yeah, a lot of things that sort of take Assassin's Creed and push it even more towards being an RPG, a story-based RPG. And I think certainly they've pulled off this RPG element better than they did in Origins. Origins was good. I liked Origins, and I think they've taken that and they've done it even better. So yeah, the bottom line for me is I don't feel it's like a fully fledged RPG yet, but but they've done quite well. I'm enjoying it, and I'm now actually struggling. It's like, do I finish Tomb Raider first, because I'm like halfway through that, or do I now continue playing Origins, because I've been having a blast with that the last 2 days? There's my little monologue.
Pete, are you going to ask, or am I going to have to?
Go on then.
Go ahead.
How many beards out of 10?
Oh, right. You know what? I've only been playing this since yesterday evening. I think I checked last night, and I managed to do 3% of the game's progress in one sitting last night. I've not actually checked my progress as of today, but I'm only just at the very beginning. I couldn't give it a score based on the fact that I've seen less than 10% of the game.
Tune in next week for Rogue's hearing score.
I don't even think I can get far enough in 1 week to be able to
really?
It is
Okay. It's deep then.
It
really
looks
deep.
like a sprawling game.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
And
It's only 7% of the real size, though, Rogue. So
the real size of Greece. Yes, exactly.
Rogue was really disappointed when he went 2 kilometers
exactly
with his character.
Because I look like Odysseus is the king of Ithaca. I swim over to Ithaca, and it's this tiny little rock. It's like, what is this thing? Like, how is he the king of this? Yeah, it turns out in real life it's like 10 times bigger. Which is not a bad thing. The map is huge. And like the different islands are separated by open sea, which you can't cross by swimming or on small boats. You need your ship to be able to move. And that's kind of how they lock you into the tutorial starting island, basically, is you can't get away without a ship. And then throughout the story, you get this ship and then you go and explore the whole rest. It's quite good. It's quite good. And something that I haven't seen yet, but I've heard and read about, is that it's not purely history anymore. Like Assassin's Creed Origins had this. You had certain parts where someone would drug you, and then you'd be fighting Anubis, or I don't even know. You'd be fighting against huge snakes and Egyptian gods. I do believe that mythology is going to play quite a significant part in Assassin's Creed Odyssey as well.
That sounds fun.
What are you giggling about, Pete?
Just some people in my chat.
Okay.
It's all right. I don't need to.
Right.
We don't need to.
So, yeah, like I said, I've only just started yesterday. I've tried to play it as much as possible to be able to talk about it today. For scores, I would defer you to something like Metacritic. Go and have a look, because there's people there who've been playing the console version for over a week now, and they have reviews up. They've put reviews up, and I say people, I mean games news organizations, websites, and magazines. So the scores are in, and it's between 8 and 9 out of 10 for the most part. So this is a well-received game at this stage, coming out on Friday.
Cool.
Shall we do... Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, that's just a brief overview. There's a lot to it.
I tried to be brief. Like I said, I'm like I'm less than 10% into the game, despite like putting in a good chunk of hours last night and all of today, essentially. So there's a lot of game there, and it's fun. Really quite good. Shall we briefly look at how Pro League did?
I'd say let's skip it just because of time.
Fair enough.
For me, I'm under a time crunch.
Okay. Should we do Q&A?
Yeah, I'd say let's
I've
get
been
into
promised in my chat Q&A.
Right then. Okay, so
the questions.
if you're looking for the results of Pro League, rather than us discussing them this time, we'll be skipping them. But you can, of course, go to pro.eslgaming.com/rainbow6, and you'll find all the scores and the current standings there. Other than that, any questions, anything in the chat you'd like us to talk about, any comments you have about anything we've been discussing so far, please post your questions now, address them to us in our individual chats, and we'll be able to answer those. Pete, since you insisted on this, do you have any one lined up?
There was one earlier, and it's a really super common one, but I can't find the question now to credit the guy. So if this is your question, just repost it really quickly so I know it was you. But basically, should mouse and keyboard be allowed on console? And he wanted us to talk about that. And I thought it was kind of interesting because we touched upon this earlier. And Microsoft are looking at allowing it natively so that you will be able to use mouse and keyboard on the Xbox, which I think is interesting because I know there is going to be a knee-jerk reaction from console gamers that they don't want any mouse and keyboard on console, and if you want to use it, go ahead and do it on PC. But I think if I've read it correctly, what Microsoft have said is you will go into a separate queue. So say, for example, I fired up the Xbox, I plugged in a mouse and keyboard, it recognizes that I've done that, and I would go into a queue with only other people using a mouse and keyboard on console. So I actually think it's quite a good solution. Because those that do want to use a controller are only playing other people that will have a controller. And as far as I can tell from what they were saying, is you can't game the system. Like, you couldn't go into a game, then unplug the keyboard and put your unplug the controller and put your keyboard in and, you know, be a bit of a sneaky git about it. That's something that they understand that people would try and do and they wouldn't allow. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing, and it gives freedom for people to be able to do it. So I think that's good. But overall, those that say using mouse and keyboard on console to compete against someone with a controller, there is 100% an advantage there. That's not to say someone who's like excellent on a controller wouldn't be able to do well, but there is just, you know, a really obvious advantage to aiming with a mouse over like using a controller where, you know, you've got to hold a stick to turn incrementally, and on a mouse you can just move it, you know, 10 inches or whatever on your mouse mat and you are aiming exactly where you want to aim. And I think what people do is like they use certain bits of hardware to achieve that. So yeah, that was one of the questions. Let me see if he's reposted it. It was, I think it was level 100 Oompa Loompa. There we are.
What was it?
So level 100 Oompa Loompa was saying earlier, he's been saying it throughout the podcast, he wanted us to talk about mouse and keyboard on console and just our general thoughts on it. So I just gave mine. And also then I mentioned what you brought up earlier about how Microsoft are looking at natively doing it, but you will queue up. If you use a keyboard, you are going to queue up against people with keyboard and mouse, which I think is good. You know, so long as there isn't a way of cheating the system, I don't see a problem with that. It just gives people choices, right?
Did you give your thoughts there, Rogue? Or
Not yet, no.
Okay. I'll shut up then.
I mean, I think I would really just echo what Pete mentioned. I think a mouse, certainly in terms of the aim, is so much more intuitive and so much quicker than holding a stick that allows you to turn like a robot. It's ridiculous. And okay, you can play around with your sensitivity, with your control stick as well, to try and turn a little bit faster. But then there's a trade-off, right? You're turning so fast that you don't have any fine control anymore. Aiming with a control stick it's one of the main reasons why I play shooters on PC. It's one of the main reasons why I play nowadays everything on PC, is because most games, apart from maybe third-person games, most games are better to control with a mouse. Like, you can still play a third-person game with a mouse and still be okay with it. Although I would say, like, something like Tomb Raider, something like Assassin's Creed, you'd still do quite well on a controller. Something maybe where you're not playing competitive anyway, yes. But first-person games, whatever shape or form they are, mouse and keyboard is better. It's a better experience single player, and it's certainly an advantage multiplayer. Like, yes, you mentioned people can play controller and do quite well. That's a fact, but you'd think that if they had the practice with mouse and keyboard, they could do even better. Like, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage by playing with a controller against mouse and keyboard. And on consoles, if they can get as far as to get to a point, both PlayStation or Sony and Microsoft with the PlayStation and the Xbox, get to a point where they can separate queues. And if you really want to play on your console because that's what you have and that's what you play on, but at the same time you want to play with mouse and keyboard, you can do so, but you'll be playing against other players who are also using mouse and keyboard, and that keeps everything fair for everyone. I think that would be the perfect solution.
I love this. I can't wait. I've been extremely vocal about people who use mouse and keyboard on console to play Rainbow Six Siege and how they are cheaters and how they basically just that they're cheating and that they're doing it to have an advantage. And what I love about this is that once this actually comes and those people who want to play console with mouse and keyboard will be able to do so, but we'll be playing against people who are using mouse and keyboard. How many of those people are still going to use their Zim 4s to bypass this process of it being recognized and still play against people with console with controllers? It's going to be a lot.
It's against terms of service, though.
It is, but that doesn't stop them right now. It's not going to stop them once it's native. They're still going to use their Zim 4 so that the gaming system doesn't recognize that they're using mouse and keyboard. They're still going to do it because they know that it will give them a huge advantage against people playing with the controller, and that's how they hit their diamond. That's how they hit the levels that they have. Okay, there will be a percentage who say, I just want to play with mouse and keyboard. I'm fine playing against other people who are mouse and keyboard, but you watch, and there's going to be no excuse anymore. None whatsoever. There will be not a single straw that they can grasp onto to say anything other than, you're right, I'm cheating. And I can't wait for that.
Cool.
Fair point. I had a question here. Yeah. Someone mentioned, what do you think of adding decay to ranks? Starting at platinum specifically, but what do you think of adding a decay to ranks? And I think what that means, and this is by Octagon the Shape. So if you stop playing, if you get to a certain rank and then don't play anymore, that your rank decreases over time as you're not playing it anymore. I think this is a concept that is used in competitive chess. So chess is really where the ELO system and the matchmaking, the ranking systems started out back in the day. And they eventually, this wasn't something that was invented at the beginning. This is something that was added eventually, was that if you reach a certain level and then stop playing, you can't just stay at that level forever. Your rank and your grading starts to degrade over time. Is that something that should be in Siege? I'll let you guys go first. I have an idea, but Pete can tell us what he thinks.
No, I'll wait because I wasn't listening very intently. I must admit I was a little bit distracted.
No,
so
I understand the question. I can see where this would make sense, but you're going to, okay, so there's a guy who hits diamond. He doesn't play for a month. Let's say his decay takes him down to, I don't know how significant they're talking, but let's say extreme scenario here. Guy hits diamond, doesn't play for 2 months. His decay takes him down to gold 1. So now I'm a gold 1 player and I'm playing against a diamond. Is that going to make you happy?
Yep.
I mean, that's what maybe not to that extreme of a scenario, but that's what could happen. I don't know that what would you fix with this? What are we fixing with this?
Yeah, so you've definitely hit on, I think, the negative aspect of that is that really people see rank as a status symbol and as a reward, but what it really is supposed to be is the matchmaking. It's supposed to put people against each other who are at the same competence level, at the same capability level. So when you punish someone, and I'm doing quotations marks here, when you punish someone by taking away their rank for being inactive, yes, exactly what you might end up doing is placing them then, when they come back, against players who are not as skilled, not as experienced, and it will be to the opposing team's detriment. Absolutely. What do you fix by it? I think one thing that it could tackle for sure in Rainbow Six is people who get their ranks illegitimately, people who get boosted by cheaters or by smurfing or by playing with people they don't normally play with, well, yeah, whether it's cheated boosting or paid boosting. Like there are boosting services that don't use cheats, they just have really, really skilled players who will then team up with randoms for money and will play them up to a certain rank, just with pure skill rather than cheating. And the pure skill part, that's not illegal. That's not against the terms of services. They're cracking down on cheated boosting, but boosting for money by skilled players is actually, there's nothing that stops you from doing that right now. And I think a thing that people do is they will, at some point, maybe at the beginning, maybe in the middle of a season, they will get that, have themselves boosted up to a certain level, and then they will never play ranked again for the rest of that season. Because if they go into, obviously, a diamond match without the person who got them there, without using whatever method got them there, they're going to be crushed. Right, they're going to lose their rank, they're going to go down, and it's humiliating, and it will be a bad experience for them. So what a rank decay would do is it would stop people being able to cheat their way, whether legal or illegal cheating, to a fake rank, and then sit on that and pretend that's them without having to work to maintain that rank. That's a positive.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I mean, anything else that on that topic? I got a question here I can go with.
Yeah, Pete, did you think anything, or?
Can you just outline the original question?
Should rank have decay? Meaning, if you hit diamond and you don't play for a month, should you come back and see that you're now plat 3 instead of diamond?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
So a question that I had is, can you go over the mess that was Cloud9 versus Rogue? So we skipped over Pro League this week, but last night Cloud9 and Rogue played, and Cloud9 had to come back from 5-1 in order to tie at 5-5, which they ended up doing. But Cloud9 should have won that match probably 6-2. Cloud9 threw 2 rounds when they were attacking, and in situations where I think they were in like 2 or 3v1s and just didn't get the diffuser down or didn't cover the person who was planning. So that allowed them to, it was like the last 10 seconds, one enemy left, and that enemy kills the person who's planting in like a 3v1 and the time runs out. And then one other time, the person who was planting got off the diffuser to go try and get a kill, time runs out. So there were like 2 or 3 rounds there where Cloud9 really threw. And they ended up having to come back from 5-1 and ended up doing it and tying 5-1. But that match could have very easily been like 6-2 Cloud9. So, I mean, my only thoughts with that would be, if you're Cloud9, you walk away like, geez, I cannot believe we even got a point out of that, but thank God we did. If you're Rogue, you're thinking, what's going on, guys? We very easily could have just gotten stomped there. And since I guess it would be DreamHack, Rogue has not looked very good at all. So I think that Rogue has some issues right now.
Yeah, they lost to SSG, didn't they, recently?
Yeah.
And they're
I
pretty
believe
close.
it was SSG. They lost to EG, they lost to SSG, and now they tied Cloud9 after a 5-1 lead.
Yeah, that's mental. That's the psychological aspect of it, isn't it? And the fact that you play all your defense, all your attack. So what map was that, and where did they start? Do you recall?
Clubhouse and Cloud9 attacked first.
Sorry, Rogue, I interrupted you twice.
Yeah, no, in the standings, Rogue has now tumbled from being one of the top teams last time we checked, last time we went over it. They're now 5th. They're now in 5th place out of 8, with Cloud9, Obey, and Noble behind them. So, yeah, they've certainly struggled in the standings after the last 2 games.
It's so tight there, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean, they're only 2 points behind Space Station, who are now 3rd. So literally in one game, they could take back the 3rd spot. Fair enough. Absolutely.
Interesting. Really entertaining match, though. Probably the most entertaining match I've watched since Paris. As far as, Pro League best of ones, that's probably the most entertaining one I've watched. And on that note, Cloud9 has a team house too, which is kind of cool. Congrats to them. I think it's the first. I think Obey might have a house kind of, but I'm not sure they all live there. I'm pretty sure Cloud9 right now has a team house that they all live in, and I think that's kind of a first for Siege and
certainly North
really
America. 2 weeks ago, the team that is currently Mockit, that used to be Augulus. I remember, was it last week or the week before? When they gave their interview after winning, they even though they used to be predominantly German players, they were in a team house, I think in Sweden. It was a Scandinavian country. So since the beginning of the second half of this season, formerly Augulus, now Mockit, have been living and playing together in a single house. And when they're playing their matches, they're actually sitting in the same room rather than being apart. So certainly not the only one for Cloud9.
That's mental, actually. Sorry. When you think about if they're actually playing matches in the same room, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but if you die, like, you can get up and you can literally go and stand behind someone, and you can be walking along spectating. as you could anyway when you die, right? But it just makes it so much quicker to spectate and give that kind of information. Because wasn't one of the allegations, because we were talking about Shaiiko earlier, and I think wasn't one allegation that team, and it was never proven, as far as I'm aware, but weren't an allegation they was using TeamViewer on a monitor?
I remember hearing murmurs of that, but I'm there with it.
Yeah.
That rings a bell. That's actually, I don't actually even know what the rules are about being able to see each other's monitor on the same team. I don't know. Or how is that policed? If there is a rule around that, how do they police that when people are living in the same house? I
think the big thing for me is that when they go to LAN, they'll feel, it's that there's no adjustment there whatsoever as far as how they feel in their pro league matches versus at LAN, and that's going to be a big thing for them. Them being able to boot camp without having to have an additional travel time, boot camp right at home and just, not have to, do anything special for that. I think that's a big advantage. So it's a good thing for Siege.
So if teams are now starting to do that, do you think we'll see just more and more and more teams starting to do that, move together?
It depends on if Pro League keeps growing. I mean, the prize pools are growing, but I mean, we really need to see some viewership growth in Pro League, man. Like, I don't know what I'm not an org owner. I don't know what they're saying, but I mean, last night I was watching that highly entertaining match that I'm referring to, and there wasn't even a bunch of rehosts last night. There wasn't like a bunch of issues. There was 8,000 people watching that. So at what point, I guess as long as the prize pools are big enough, you can keep drawing big orgs, but at some point you're going to need to draw more than 8,000 people to your Pro League contests in order to justify orgs spending money on team houses.
Rogue and I were talking about that.
Yeah.
Like, they could do more to promote it, well, in my opinion, in game. And Rogue said to me, well, they do sometimes promote it on the banner or what have you.
And I've seen it since then.
Yeah. Imagine if people could tune in game.
Absolutely.
Like, you didn't even know it was going on, and it just says Continuum play, and the Continuum, e.g. playing, Rogue or whoever, and it's like, oh, like, I'm waiting for some friends to come along, and it just tunes you in and it puts the Twitch page up. It's totally doable.
COD did that in Black Ops 3. There was a player built in right into PlayStation.
I reckon you would add a 0 on the end of some of these viewerships they're getting at the minute.
Absolutely. And introduce how many people to Pro League.
Very good points, and maybe we'll see that in future, but we're running out of time. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining in. Hope you enjoyed that, and see you again next time.
See you guys.
Bye.